Hi everyone. Have you ever felt caught between following rules and acting out of love? This tension is at the heart of one of the most profound teachings in the New Testament. Today we're diving into the concept of the law of Christ and how it relates to the seemingly paradoxical statements of the Apostle Paul about law and grace. To understand this, we need to step back in time to the 1st century AD. The early Christian church was grappling with a crucial question. How much of the old Jewish law should Gentile converts follow? This wasn't just a theological debate, it was a practical issue affecting daily life. Enter Saul of Tarsus, better known to us as the Apostle Paul. Once a zealous Pharisee, Paul had a dramatic conversion experience on the road to Damascus. This former persecutor of Christians became one of the most influential figures in spreading the gospel. Paul's unique background as both a strict adherent to Jewish law and a convert to Christianity gave him a special perspective on this issue. In his letters, particularly to the Galatians and Romans, Paul wrestles with the relationship between the law and grace. In Galatians 2:16, Paul writes, "A person is not justified by the works of the law, but by faith in Jesus Christ." This seems to suggest that the law is no longer important. But then in Romans 3:31, he says, "Do we then nullify the law by this faith? Not at all. Rather, we uphold the law." At first glance, these statements might appear contradictory. How can we make sense of this? The key lies in understanding what Paul means by the law of Christ. This concept appears in Galatians 6:2, where Paul instructs believers to carry each other's burdens, and in this way you will fulfill the law of Christ. But what exactly is this law? To answer this, we need to look at Jesus' own words. When asked about the greatest commandment, Jesus replied in Matthew 22:37-40, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. And the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and the prophets hang on these two commandments." Jesus wasn't abolishing the law, he was distilling its essence. The law of Christ, then, is not a new set of rules, but a principle of love that fulfills the spirit of the law. Paul elaborates on this in Romans 13:8-10, saying, "Let no debt remain outstanding, except the continuing debt to love one another, for whoever loves others has fulfilled the law. Love does no harm to a neighbor. Therefore, love is the fulfillment of the law." So when Paul speaks of being free from the law, he's referring to the legalistic observance of rules without understanding their purpose. The law of Christ shifts the focus from external compliance to internal transformation. It's not about following a checklist of do's and don'ts, but about allowing love to guide our actions. This concept was revolutionary in Paul's time, and it remains profound today. Think about it. How often do we find ourselves following rules without understanding their purpose? Or worse, using rules as a way to judge others rather than to express love? The law of Christ challenges us to move beyond mere rule following to a deeper, more meaningful engagement with our faith and our relationships. It's like the difference between mechanically following a recipe and cooking with passion and creativity. The end result might look similar, but the process and the spirit behind it are entirely different. But this doesn't mean that all rules are bad or unnecessary. Paul is clear that grace doesn't give us license to sin. In Romans 6:1-2, he asks, "Shall we go on sinning so that grace may increase? By no means. We are those who have died to sin. How can we live in it any longer?" The law of Christ, then, is about transformation, not permission. It's about being so filled with love for God and others that we naturally want to do what's right. It's like a parent caring for a child. They don't need a rule book to tell them to feed and protect their baby. Their love compels them to do so. This understanding helps us reconcile Paul's seemingly contradictory statements. We are indeed free from the law as a means of earning salvation or righteousness, but we uphold the law by fulfilling its true intent through love. Paul's teachings on the law of Christ have profound implications for how we live our faith. It challenges us to examine our motivations. Are we following rules out of fear, habit, or a desire to appear righteous? Or are our actions flowing from a heart of love for God and others? The law of Christ also affects how we treat others. If love is the fulfillment of the law, then judging and condemning others falls short of God's standard. Instead, we're called to bear one another's burdens, to show compassion, and to extend grace, just as we've received grace. This principle extends to every area of life. In our families, workplaces, and communities, we're called to act not out of obligation or self-interest, but out of love. It's a high standard, one that we can only hope to achieve through God's help and the transforming power of the Holy Spirit. The beauty of the law of Christ is that it's not about perfection, but direction. It's about gradually allowing God's love to permeate every aspect of our being, changing us from the inside out. It's a lifelong journey of growth and transformation. As we wrap up, let's revisit our opening question. Have you ever felt caught between following rules and acting out of love? The law of Christ shows us that when we're truly acting out of love, we're fulfilling the deepest intent of God's law. It's not about choosing between rules and love, but about allowing love to be the driving force behind our obedience. Paul's teachings on the law of Christ offer us a profound and liberating way to live our faith. They challenge us to move beyond legalism and into a life motivated by love. As we embrace this principle, may we find ourselves growing in love for God and for others, fulfilling the law in ways we never thought possible. Thank you for watching.